Welcome to week 2 of the short row sleeve cap cowl. I hope you all got on okay last week doing your swatches. You managed to swatch and block, you're happy with the drape of your fabric, you're happy with your gauge, and you've chosen a size. Today we're going to talk about the back panel. So this is my finished back panel that I've made, and I'm going to take you through step by step how this was constructed. We'll talk about this back neck drop, the joining of these two pieces, a little bit about the underarm shaping, a bit about yarn carrying, and a little bit about leaving ends. So let's get started. So I'm just getting started with the back panel here, and I am working the back neck drop. So for the sweater, I'm going to have this little amount of neck drop, and then the back neck is going to start here. So these are my shoulder pieces, and then later I will add the collar or neckline trim here. So back neck drop is just useful to provide a little bit of extra space around the back of the garment. It kind of prevents it from rising up against your neck, which can sometimes happen. In the cardigan, I don't have that because the cardigan is open at the front. It's just a slightly different construction. So I've got my first side here, which is my just 4 rows. I'm working on a size small. I've left this tail here at the start because I'm going to use this to sew this shoulder to the front panel when we get there. I think the guide is about 3 times the length, so this should be plenty to sew it in. So that's my first piece, which I've fastened off. My second piece, again, I've left a long tail there. I've not fastened this one off because the next row, so I've got my 4 rows there, my 4 rows here, is going to be the joining row. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to work in pattern along to the end of this bit. Remember, I'm left-handed, so you're going to see this. If you're right-handed, you'll see it in reverse. So I'm going to work in pattern along here, then I'm going to chain as described in the pattern. So I'll chain 75 and then continue working in pattern along here. So I will work 2 extended single crochet in the first stitch there, which is the last stitch of that previous row. So I'm kind of on the same side for both of these pieces. Again, having the tail on the same size with the same number of rows indicates these are proportionately the same size, or relatively the same size. Just a quick note that when you come to the end of this first bit, in the pattern you'd normally work 1 extended single in that last stitch, but because I'm creating an extended row, I'm going to work 2 extended single crochet in that last stitch. Now the amount of stitches in the chain will allow for the fact that essentially I've got a little extra stitch there. Okay, a little note to self to not try and read patterns while recording the tutorial, because 75 is actually the total stitches I want at the end of this row. So my chain needs to be 48 for the size small. So I've chained 48 here, and then I'm going to continue working. Just untwist that. The trouble with leaving all these long tails is you get in a bit of a mess when you're first starting. I've got my 48 chains there, and then I'm going to pick up this piece. So here's where I've fastened off. That's where I've fastened off. So I'm going to continue working in pattern, and you're going to need to hold that fasten off loop tight so this doesn't come undone. So I'm going to work 2 extended singles in that last stitch. 1, 2, and you need to be careful not to twist this turning chain, which I've probably done. So 2 extended in there, and then continue working in the pattern. So skip a stitch, 2 extended singles, right the way across to the end. Okay, so this is the end of my joining row. So what I'm going to do next is just work in pattern all the way across to the end, and then I'm going to continue to work my back panel down to where I get to the armhole shaping. I'm going to change colours either at 10 or 12 rows with this because I'm working with 2 colours. I'll decide when I get there. Here you've got this little tail, which is where I fasten that piece off. So I just try to keep it out of the way. Personally, I wait right till the end to sew my ends in. But once you're into the back panel, you might want to just sew that one in just so it's not catching on your work. So just to quickly show you how to work into this end bit. So you can see here, this is that first stitch that I made into this section when I joined it from the chain. So I'm going to work 2 single crochet into that stitch, and then I've got my chain beginning. Now I do have a separate tutorial all about working into chains once you're in a project, because this is my chain that I made to join it. So this is the chain that I'm going to skip, but I'm working into this underside of the chain. Usually you work into these little lumps when you start crocheting into chains, but because this is kind of in the middle of the piece, I'm going to work under these top 2 loops as if it was a normal stitch. So it can be a bit fiddly, but it's worth doing in my opinion. So I'll skip that one, and the way I actually work it is I work into the little back loop and then I turn it round. So I'm going to work 2 extended in there. So I just sort of twist it around and manipulate it to make it easier, because trying to insert your hook underneath those 2 can be a little bit tricky. So there's my little back hump. I'm going to pop under and then just turn it back the right way round. So that's how I work into this side of the chain. Just one last thing to note, and this is going to apply when you're joining the front panels as well. When you go back to the second side, you can see here I've got that chain. That is my last chain, so I'm going to work 2 extended singles in that last chain. Now the temptation when you get to the start of this little piece is to work in the first stitch, but remember you're working in pattern here, so we're skipping that first of the pair. There's my pair, skipping that, and we're going to work in the second, and we're going to keep working that pattern to the end. I just wanted to show you that quickly because I think it's somewhere you could get caught out. Okay, so there we have that next row where I've worked into the chain. It almost doesn't quite fit on there. Just stop and double check you haven't got any twists there, but you can see there are all those little back humps, which is where I'm gonna work into right at the end when I come to do the neckline. For now, we can just carry on working in pattern down to the underarm shaping. And a quick advanced tip for the underarm shaping is just follow carefully what's written. It can feel a little bit counterintuitive, but just follow the instructions as written, not how you think they should be written. So just a quick update. I've finished the straight edges on the back. I've done 12 rows of each colour, and I'm 6 into this second repeat of the variegated, and I'm just about to start the armhole shaping, the underarm shaping. So essentially what will happen, let's show you on this side where it's not curling, is I'm going to start increasing under there to make the armhole shaping, and I'll start with a couple of rows of gentle increase and then a more steep increase after that. So you should get a curve that looks like that. The length of the curve is, and the size of the increases and the number of rows are all going to change depending on which size you're working, and there's some differences between the cardigan and the sweater pattern, but the principle is the same both ways. So you can see I'm making progress. I have completed the underarm shaping here. Let's show you this side. And I've put, so you can see I've got a couple of rows of increases here, and then some steeper increases here, which is what I was mentioning before. Then I've added this stitch marker in the last row of the shaping. You can either put it in the last row of the shaping or the first row of non-shaping. That's just useful, so when you come to seam up the sides, you can easily see where to stop. So I'll stop around that orange area, and then this will make half the armhole. The other thing to note, here I've carried the yarn up the sides. The way I do this is when I yarn over to chain, when I'm working up the sides, I catch the carried yarn and I just wrap that from front to back, the opposite way that I yarn over, just to catch it in so it's tucked nicely up the sides. That's going to be a seam, so well, I will work around that when it's the armhole, so I will cover that section up. And here we have my finished back piece. It's pretty cropped, but I was going for a crop look. Note that this also needs to be blocked, so it's going to increase in length a little bit with blocking. Next week I'm going to show you how I can work out what length it should be based on gauge, because obviously I've deviated from the length in the pattern, which is something you are also free to do. Just one little thing to note about this is where I have changed colours. So I've got my 5 stripes, 2 of the light pink, 3 in this variegated yarn. So you can see at the end of these panels where I've changed colour, so at the end of the colour sections, I've left an extra long tail here because I'm going to use this tail, except, yeah, I have done it, this should be enough. So I'm going to use this tail for the seaming section, so I can seam using the colours that I'm seaming, because the front is going to have the same colour order as the back. So I just wanted to make a note about that if you're using thicker stripes, use this little extra, this one doesn't count because this is where I've changed colours, but I think you get the point I'm trying to make. If not, drop a note in the comments and I'll explain it when I'm feeling a little bit more articulate. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to block this and make a start on the front panels. Next week I'm going to talk about the front panels. I'm going to talk a little bit about neck shaping, and I'm going to talk about blocking. But if there's any questions you have on this back panel, just drop a note in the comments, add to the Facebook post that I'll pop up, Instagram, or comment on the Cal homepage, and I will do my best to answer it. And again, if there's any questions that come up again and again, I'll answer them in next week's video. In the meantime, have a great weekend and enjoy making your back panel.